Hey guys, welcome back to another podcast episode of the Great Graspy Podcast. Today I will be reviewing the book Turtles All the Way Down by John Green, and I am here with my special guest, Lana Hurwitza.
What's up, guys? I'm so excited to be here.
This book takes place in Indianapolis, Indiana, at the start of the character's junior year. You follow a 16-year-old girl, Aza Holmes, who suffers from severe OCD and anxiety that she wants to control but can't. You also follow her friend Daisy Ramirez, who writes Star Wars fanfics and works at Chuck E. Cheese. Davis Pickett, who was friends with Aza as a kid and is the son of a fugitive billionaire who has a $100,000 reward attached to his name and also has no mother. And then Daisy Ramirez forces Aza to assist her in finding Mr. Pickett and split the cash reward. Aza becomes acquainted with Davis again, who is suspicious of her intentions since there's a lot of people trying to find his dad as well. They end up falling in love, but Davis can't trust that Aza isn't there for the cash prize, so he gives her $100,000 and sees if she still stays in his life. She does, but after a few months, her mental illness gets too out of control, and she has to end things. After some time, Aza and Daisy find Mr. Pickett without purposely trying, and gives Davis the option if he wants to tell the authorities or not. The book ends with Aza growing up, getting a job, having a family and house, etc. She ends up telling the reader she wrote the book as an exercise given by her therapist.
You know, after hearing what you said about Daisy, I can infer that she must be an interesting character because I have been to a Chuck E. Cheese and it was an unforgettable experience to say the least. So I think she seems like a great character.
Yeah. The two leading themes in this book are mental illness and self-acceptance. As I mentioned, Aza struggles heavily with OCD and anxiety, and here are a few quotes she says to describe her experience. Everyone wanted me to feed them the story, darkness to light, weakness to strength, broken to whole. I wanted it too. She says she wants to get better, but it's not that simple. Another quote is, the problem is that I can't lose my mind. It's inescapable. Aza is in her mind too much that she can never separate from it. The next theme, self-acceptance, can be seen when it mentions, you are as real as anyone, and your doubts make you more real than less. How would you interpret this, Lana?
You know, I think it's a good mantra because, you know, being vulnerable and showing our imperfections really equates to strength, I think.
Yeah.
And I think like you can be a better version of yourself when you're more authentic.
Yeah. You really do enjoy these existentialism talks, don't you?
I do. I love them.
Now on to the main characters. Aza's mental illness impacts her daily life, relationships, and view of herself. In the book, she says, the thing about a spiral is, if you follow it inward, it never actually ends. It just keeps tightening infinitely. Another quote is, please let me go. I'll do anything. I'll stand down. You can have this body. I don't want it anymore. Both of these quotes are talking about her experiences with her OCD. Okay, this question is for Lana and the audience. Comment down below if you suffer from anything in your day-to-day life that people judge you for.
So, for me, I don't have a diagnosis of any type. Sorry, that's not funny. I'm not trying to be funny. But, I do talk to myself sometimes, and close family members and friends will sometimes make fun of me, but it's just something I've always done, and I think it helps me process things. But, you know, it's if people make fun of me, it's like, should I stop? But I feel like,
of course not.
For me, it's
if
I don't know.
It's not harming you.
It's me being authentic. I feel like it's just something I've always done. So I'm not gonna stop because of other people.
You need that authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
Now on to Davis Pickett. He was born without a mom, and his dad, like I mentioned, is a fugitive billionaire, so he's missing. And he has a younger brother who he now has to be the parent for. And he has a bunch of new responsibilities, and some quotes that he said in the book are, I guess I realized I had to be a big brother, that's my full-time occupation now, that's who I am. He also said, I have to do everything around here, I have to be the one who takes care of everything because no one else will. Now, Lana, I know you're the older sibling and have a younger brother, so do you ever feel like you're left parenting your brother at any time, or?
I mean, my brother's a freshman, so I feel like there's not a huge age gap, but maybe on a minor level, I think, like, he's pretty insufficient at making food for himself, so sometimes I gotta help out there, like a mother would, but For the most part, I wouldn't say so. I think we're treated slightly differently. Me being the older sibling, like, he gets away with a lot more.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I don't parent too much.
Yeah.
So.
Like, I'm the younger sibling, and I have 3 older brothers, and I wouldn't even say that they parent me much, to the extent that Davis parents his little brother. Now moving on to our book's conflicts, the main one deals with Azza's fear of contracting a deadly bacteria. It consumes her life so much, when she starts thinking about it, she can't stop. In the book, she quotes, "There was no way to see the bacteria, no way to prevent it from slipping inside and turning me into a walking death machine." She also says, "His bacteria would be in me forever, 80 million of them, breeding and growing and joining my bacteria and producing God knows what."
Grass, I feel like you're a little bit of a germaphobe. Maybe in the way that you clean your room a lot. That's how we're different, I would say.
Yeah. Well, even, like, in the food sense, I don't really like sharing drinks with people. Just thinking exactly what Azza thinks. Like, I don't like drinking from the same straw. I don't really like sharing forks. One of my biggest things is, like, this is just how I've always been. I don't like touching change. Like, I will, but I immediately...
Oh, I did actually know that.
I immediately put on hand sanitizer after I touch change because I don't know what it is about them. Our next conflict is between Azza and Daisy and their friendship. They are constantly on different pages with different priorities and are slowly growing disconnected from each other over time. The book quotes from Daisy, "What are my parents' names? What are their jobs? When was the last time you were even at my apartment? We're supposed to be friends, and you don't even know if I have any pets." In the same fight, she also said, "I shouldn't have to ask you to read my writing. You could take 3 seconds away from your nonstop contemplation of yourself to think about other people's interests." Over the duration of this book, Daisy grows increasingly frustrated with Azza and her habits that come along with her mental illness. Now, this relates to the real world by showing the complexities of a relationship between two very different people. Azza doesn't prioritize Daisy's interests enough. She never reads the fanfics that she writes just because she doesn't like Star Wars. And Azza's fear of contracting a deadly bacteria sheds light on the mental health stigma and addresses the challenges individuals face when seeking help and understanding from friends and family. When Azza is at the therapist and wants to get help but can't get herself to take the meds because she doesn't like the idea of taking a pill to become her normal self again. Now, the writing style involved lots of figurative language and quotes from other sources. I found it really hard to follow along, and I had to stop and reread several times. In the book, Azza quoted, "Dr. Singh told me once that if you had a perfectly tuned guitar and a perfectly tuned violin in the same room, and you pluck the D string of a guitar, then all the way across the room, the D string on the guitar will also vibrate. I could always feel my mother's vibrating strings." Now, when I read that, I did not understand it whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not musically inclined, but, like, I would definitely have to reread that. That is a little confusing.
Now on to my opinion portion of this review. I thought it was a really interesting book to read, topic-wise, but I did find it a little bit too repetitive. Tell me if this is insensitive, but the moments where Azza had fights with her mind, those portions would take up several pages, and each time it would consist of the same thing. So I found that part to be repetitive, and for this being a book for teenagers, I would have thought it would be an easier book to read.
Honestly, like, my thought as to, like, ask you a question, I feel like there's so many movies nowadays and just shows and stuff depicting teenagers, and I feel like a lot of times they just portray teenagers in the wrong way.
Yeah.
Do you think this book does a good job?
See, one thing I was kind of thrown off even before, like, I started reading, John Green is obviously a man, and he is writing this book in a teenage girl's mind. Now, like, comparing it to, like, movies and shows, I think he did, like, a decent job. Like, there was nothing that was, like, too out of the ordinary that was, like, that is nothing like today's age. So I think he did a good job with that. Comment down below if there are some deal breakers in books for you guys. So the impact on the reader's daily life after reading this book, it teaches people to understand other people suffering from mental health issues and shows what they really suffer from in the real side of it. Now, before reading this, I had a false sense of what OCD really was. Now, I'm curious, what do you, like, in your terms, what would you say OCD is?
I mean, I used to hear about it being like one of those things where you're just extra organized and you can't have your crayons in the crayon box not being in rainbow order. But I now know more like it's kind of like your mind is manipulating you to feel certain ways about things, and it's like just like a stress kind of disorder. I don't know. And it's like the repetition, like you brought up before.
Yeah. Like, before this, I thought OCD, like you said, was just about being extremely organized and having everything perfect. But in this book, Asa experiences uncontrollable recurring thoughts and had a hard time dealing with uncertainty, also having a fear of contamination, which are all common symptoms of OCD. Now, after reading this book, I think that I would recommend it for all high school students so they can see firsthand what mental illness is really like in other teenagers. And I would also recommend this book for people who enjoyed our existentialism and mental health reading units. And if you did enjoy those units, I would also recommend reading Percival Being a Wallflower, All the Right Places, like we read in our mental health unit, Everything, and 13 Reasons Why, which
Okay, so now I do wonder, do you think now that after reading this book, you could better be an ally to people struggling with this specific disorder?
Yeah. Like, reading this book, I think that I kind of resonated with Daisy's character, her friend, in the sense that, like, she was there for her throughout the whole book, but she did still kind of get frustrated with her and her, like, Asa only focusing on herself and being preoccupied with her mind, which kind of left Daisy to have a bunch of, like, alone time with herself.
You know, we talked about being authentic on this podcast, and you said resignated instead of resonated, so just because this is an English class, I feel like I gotta point that out to you.
Okay, thank you for stopping by and listening to my review on Turtles All the Way Down by John Green. Comment down below if you would read this book. Remember, mental health isn't a choice, and it's okay to not be okay.
I think I would read it because John Green is a great guy. I like watching his Crash Course, so maybe I'll read it.
Go watch John Green.